The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is Andre Mayetta. I'll be your podcast host. Big thanks to Uka the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another fun-filled show. Today's episode features Rich Woodall, who is a comic artist, had his own comic, Johnny Raygun, many years ago, as we discussed, and a new Kickstarter coming out for one of his new projects that he'd written. But he also does a lot of cover work for varying covers for different companies, and he's an amazing artist, some really cool stuff. So got to talk to him today, which was a great conversation. I discovered a new TV show recently, that show being Brand New Cherry Flavor, which is a Netflix show that I've been really digging. Back when Netflix first started, there was a horror show on it called Hemlock Grove, I believe, and that was the first time I saw Bill Skarsgård in anything, who you may know as Pennywise nowadays, and he's in a bunch of other stuff. But at that time, I started watching it and really did not like it, and after a while I kind of fell out of it. And because of that, I never really went back to much horror stuff, in Netflix. But I started watching this one, and it's pretty good. It's based on a book, and full of fun horror iconography stuff that you're going to recognize. We got some zombies, we got witches, we got curses, we got snuff films, we got all kinds of fun stuff. So it's a cool show, very interesting, very well done, very well written, and one of those great shows where two impenetrable forces are circling one another, and either refuses to budge. And because of that, it's very good. It's super solid show. There are some big things coming down the pipeline with this show. It's going to be advertised better, and we're also going to be hosting it in a place that allow it to be hosted all over instead of just the avenues I have it in currently, which means there'll be new homes in its various places. And I'm just navigating that now. There'll be a new numbering system. I have some new intros in the old episodes to explain why, the references to the other episodes I used to do back in the day, where I would just talk about comic characters and not just have interviews, which as I do now. So kind of getting ready of all that, and just getting it all sorted in a better way. So that'll be coming down the pipeline very soon. I'm not sure exactly when that'll happen, but it should be within the next few weeks. So I have a bunch of other interviews in the can. They'll all be in the new place. But when we have the new feed set up, I'll have a post on the old feed to direct people to the new one, hopefully. So that's the basic plan as of now. And so bigger and better things coming down the pipeline. But that's enough about the show. You're having a busy day. You want to hear me talk to Rich Woodall. So why don't you? Here's my conversation with comic artist Rich Woodall.
Hi, Andre.
Hey, Rich, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so sorry that I've been such a pain in the ass through all.
Not at all.
Really apologize.
No, not at all. Believe me, you as far as pains in the ass go when it comes to organizing stuff like this, you are far from the worst.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I was like, this guy must think I'm just a fucking idiot.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I appreciate you being on the show.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate you guys having me.
Awesome. Well, where are you calling from today?
I'm in New Hampshire.
I don't know if you've talked to someone from New Hampshire yet. That's exciting.
Oh, good deal.
How are things going down in your neck of the woods?
It's cold as you're in Canada, right? Are you in Canada?
Yeah, Nova Scotia, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you understand cold.
Actually,
we have us beat.
Oddly enough, my province, I'm right above Maine there. So our province is surprisingly warm. And it's been nice. It's been, well, we're on a Celsius, so it's been hovering around 0 or 1.
Yeah.
which isn't bad for this time of the year. Like it's January, so we've
Right.
had plus 1, 2, 3, 4 days the last few days. Today's a
Oh,
little
the
colder, but everyone else seems to be having like out in the like Alberta and those middle provinces, they seem to be having a way colder time than we. So
Yeah, we just got hit with a cold snap. I mean, last week, again, Fahrenheit, we were in the 50s,
mm-hmm.
which is crazy warm here
Mm-hmm.
for January. And it just we got it hit with a cold snap the last couple days, but not, it's below freezing, but not as horrible as it could be.
Yeah, for sure. What is New Hampshire always been home for you? Is that where you're?
Most of my life. I traveled a lot as a kid. Born in California, then Colorado, then Arkansas, then
Wow.
Kentucky. So yeah, it was as a kid I just traveled all over, and I finally I spent my last 2 years of high school in New Hampshire, and my parents moved away, and I was like, that's it. I'm not moving anymore with you guys. Like I'm gonna stay here. And
Was
I
dad
ended up
like
moving.
a company man or military or?
Yeah, so he was with Walmart, or he is with Walmart,
Okay.
and basically to move up that corporate ladder, you gotta move. We moved once a year, every year for about 10 years.
Oh wow. So what was that like? Yeah, I mean, obviously keeping friendships and stuff would have been tough because you're never around long enough to.
Yeah, yeah, and that was kind of the thing is, we would move. It was usually summer. I don't know if they did that for our benefit or not. It
Yeah.
was usually summer, and you move into a new town in the summer, and you don't really have a chance to meet anybody. Then first day of school is like when you're meeting everybody, and then by the time you kind of build those friendships up, you're moving again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely rough, but that was probably why I got into comics and art and stuff was, I kind of had to entertain myself and comics were at every town I went to, pretty much. Um and that was one of the cool things. Actually the first big move for us was when I like got comics. It
Hmm.
was I moved to this little town called Stuttgart, Arkansas. And I remember within the first week, I like got on my little Huffy bike, and rode down like 2 blocks to the 7-Eleven.
Hmm.
They had a spinner rack, and I got this book right here,
Oh
Classic
wow.
X-Men 17. That was the first. Well, I'd always had comics before that, but this was the first one like I bought,
Hmm.
and it just like blew my mind. It was amazing. So yeah, that's what started it all, man.
That's
And then from
awesome.
there, uh yeah, it was kind of it was rough at first because you get into comic books, but you're in this little town and there were no comic shops within like, it was like an hour and a half to get to the closest comic shop.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Spinner
so it
racks is what
wasn't.
you had.
Yeah,
Yeah.
spinner, and it's like you hit every drugstore, and it's like this drugstore carries DC comics. For some reason, they don't carry Marvel, but this one over here carries Marvel, and yeah,
That's amazing. So was X-Men what was like what did you glob onto X-Men? Is that what you carried on with because of that initial
yeah,
introduction?
yeah. That was. I mean, I became an like almost instant Marvel zombie. It was. I bought everything Marvel at that time, especially the X-Men though. And as a 12 or 13-year-old kid, I didn't understand that classic X-Men was reprints
Yeah. Yeah, I
of
remember
like old
having that
stuff.
revelation with the Marvel Tales Spider-Man, same thing. I was like, well, what is
Right, yeah.
yeah, I was like, what is why, trying to follow the numbering was like when you're young and don't really
Right.
understand all that. But
Yeah, totally. And so yeah, so I'm going to the 7-Eleven and I'm getting Uncanny X-Men and I'm like, "Oh, this is really weird. Like it doesn't seem anything to do with this other story." And it
yeah.
took me several issues to figure out, oh, these are reprints of these older stories. And but I mean, I was still getting, and then I was just buying everything. And like I said, I think my 7-Eleven was mainly they may have had DC stuff, but I don't even think I cared. Like I just wanted Marvel stuff, and I bought everything: Captain America, and Thor, and Marvel Age. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I was so excited when Marvel Age was coming out on a regular basis. So yeah, it was kind of cool.
Yeah, the days of those books and like when they were keeping everything in continuity for you, you could follow it all in a nice succinct way. Was
Yeah,
pretty great. I mean, I know DC had its own complications, like because they did a crisis, and then there's a
right.
different world, and it's got even more convoluted as the years have piled on. At least with Marvel, it's like, well, sometimes it doesn't quite line up, and every once in a while they need to update what war the Punisher was in. But everyone, but it got, but every once in a, they're like, well, World War II is pretty far away now. Vietnam's even further. Well, I think it was Vietnam to start with, but
Yeah, yeah,
it
it was
was like
Vietnam before,
Vietnam's pretty
yeah.
far away, and then it's like, well, Korea maybe, and Desert Storm, and
Right. Yeah.
getting for followed up the chain.
Yeah,
Um,
it is funny how that is one specific thing. And going back, I have the Marvel Unlimited app or whatever it's
yeah, I
called.
actually just got it. It's awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan.
I started reading in publication order,
Mhm.
starting with 1961, and I'm up to 2001
Oh my
now. I mean,
God.
it's taken like
So
6 years.
you're reading everything that came in.
Well, I started reading everything
Uh-huh.
in the late 80s. I was like, there's some of this stuff that I just can't read. Like, I've given up on this. I flip through every issue, no
Yeah.
matter what it is, but I'm like, either the art's horrible or I just couldn't get into the story, and it got worse in the 90s. But now that I'm in the 2000s, like it's getting better again.
That
So
that was sort of my golden age because I'm 20 or sorry 20 I'm 38, so
yeah,
like yeah I was gonna try to get my wish, but like back in the day I remember I worked at a store. It was in the mall in town I lived in called Antigonish, and I used to work at a hobby store, and it was kind of like a 7-Eleven. They sold all
yeah.
that other stuff. We were right across the street in my particular province. Liquor stores are their own businesses. You can't buy liquor at
Oh,
a
sure.
convenience store or anything. So we were
Yes.
across the street from a liquor store or across the way in the mall. So everyone would come there to get the mix, but they also sold and cigarettes and stuff. But they also sold comics and cards. And I was into
Yeah,
Magic cards at the time. So that's when
sure.
I was reading comics as a kid really early on because whatever I could pick up used stores or anywhere. But then, and it's funny the books you find at those places, that
Yeah,
sort of that sort of take up a special place in your head for like the type of stories that you kindly remember. Um,
absolutely.
like there's a used store that used to sell when DC Comics started doing, I think it was DC started doing a Judge Dredd comic in
Oh,
like
yeah.
the in the 90s, and I
Yes.
remember I used to get a bunch of those because like, and that was to me that was the Judge Dredd I was familiar with because I
Yeah.
never had 2000 AD or anything like that, obviously, but
Yeah.
now obviously I get back to it, but
Those
um,
were awesome. That had J.H. Williams
yeah, they were really good.
yeah, so good. And I think Mike Oming might have
I
done
believe so. Yeah.
maybe some of that. Yeah, I love that stuff. And that was probably my introduction to Judge Dredd too.
Yeah. But yeah, because of that, like when I was working there, I was in high school and then I graduated in 2003. So right around late 90s, early 2000s is where I started getting that getting that that's I was like, what is that shadow? It's this thing. I have a different mic. It just this one's for when I use this for other reasons. But
Sure.
yeah, so like everything that was coming out then, which was like Grant Morrison's X-Men, Jay
Yeah.
like uh, Straczynski's Spider-Man, like
Yes.
all that stuff that was like seminal comic work that like still is like some of my favorite stuff is all right around that time
Absolutely.
period. All that Nuff said stuff when they brought back
Oh yeah.
Captain Marvel with Janice Vell, and oh man, it was like the best
Yeah,
stuff. I love that stuff.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how that it's almost like Doctor Who. It's like whoever you watched
yeah,
first is like your doctor.
yeah.
And so yeah, that time period that you started is so dear to your heart. And yeah, it's kind of awesome.
Yeah, I'm an outlier on the Doctor Who. My favorite's Capaldi, and he came much later
Oh,
than
yeah,
but yeah, but he's pretty great.
he is pretty awesome. I mean, he's just amazing to watch in
I actually
general
just
for anything.
watched. I just got the Criterion Channel, and
Oh, nice.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big movie guy. So
Yeah,
I literally the other night they have a new collection of Ken Russell movies, and I
yeah,
haven't
yeah.
seen very many. So I was like, well, Now's the time. So I watched Lair of the White Worm, which is
Oh, yeah.
like really
Is
old
he
horror.
in that?
Yeah, he's one of the main characters.
Oh my God. Like I haven't seen that since I was probably a teenager.
Yeah, he's the like the archaeologist guy that's living in the house.
No
Yeah,
kidding. Oh my God.
yeah.
I have to go back and watch
It's
that
weird.
now.
It's weird seeing him so young. 'Cause he's always been old to me, right? So,
Right, yeah. Totally.
but it's a fun trivia note. He's the only doctor to win an Oscar. So,
No
there's that.
kidding.
Yeah,
Well, I guess that makes sense. I mean,
he had a short film with Richard E. Grant. That was it's called. If you can look it up on YouTube, it's really good. It's called "It's a Wonderful Life, Mr. Kafka" or something. And
yeah.
it's like the idea. It's a story of "It's a Wonderful Life," but for Franz Kafka.
Yeah.
And he's trying to write the Metamorphosis, but he's having trouble coming up with it. And it's very good.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's a hoot. But cool. So was drawing just next on the table after started reading comics?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had always been drawing. I mean, my earliest memory of drawing is like I remember being in, it must have been kindergarten or first grade. You have those worksheets that, everybody's working on, and remember flipping it over for some reason. It might have even been one of those things when you're done, flip over your work kind of
Hmm.
thing. I don't remember. I flipped it over and I could still see the circle from whatever was on the front of the page. And so I drew the circle, and I was really into GI Joe at the time, I'm sure. And so I started drawing like, oh, this is going to be like a GI Joe machine. So I put paint treads on it and little army men, and the circle it was more like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Terror Dome. It was just a giant round circle, and I
Oh
put
yeah.
layers in it, and I'm like, well, this is their bedroom, and this is where they keep all their armory stuff, and yeah, and that's the first thing I remember drawing. But yeah, when by the time I was like 12, 13, and I got that book, like I was just like, now I know what I want to do. I want to draw comics, and I mean, I drew absolutely horrible, horrible things, but
Well, you
but
got to start somewhere.
you get better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So, were you just aping the stuff you were seeing in the comics you were reading as time progressed, or were you kind of
A
getting your
little
own
bit. I
flavor
mean,
early?
I tried to do my own stuff, um, and it never looked, it never looked right. At the time, I didn't know. I had no clue. It didn't look right. But I also remember getting the official handbook to the Marvel Universe, and I would trace like the figures on those, and then I would add my own. I would make up my own costumes and characters and stuff. And in that town, it just happened after I discovered comics. One of the kids that lived there was really into comics, and he had probably been collecting a couple years. So he had a small collection. So we used to like swap things back and forth. But he was an artist, and he was way better than me. Um, and so we kind of like decided we're going to make our own universe. And for like 4 or 5 years after I moved away, like we were pen pals, like we sent each other back and forth drawings and stuff, and like every once in a while, he would come and visit me during the summer wherever the hell I was, and he would stay and we would make like a 3 or 4 page comic, and we didn't know how comics were made, so like he would draw his characters and I would draw my characters on the page, and we would you know really poorly letter and write it, and we'd even color it with really horrible markers and stuff, and have it seemed like every place I moved to, I could find at least one person that was into comics and could draw,
Hmm.
and so that kind of kept me. It was almost like a competition kind of thing, because everybody was always better than me. Every place I went, they were always better than me. So I would learn a lot from them. It was kind of cool. Um, and but I'm the only one that was tenacious enough to just keep with it, even though I wasn't the best one. I just kept going with it.
I was about to
Every
comment. I was going to say that is the case. Usually, all the people that are like they fall out or they get lives, and it's not.
yeah,
It's amazing how much of being a creative type is just actually finishing something. Like that is, and as I get older, I'm like, that's a big problem. You really gotta stick with it. And finishing something is probably like I'd say it's like 50%
oh,
of the process.
absolutely.
It's fun to
Yeah,
come up with ideas and write it down, but you got to finish it. You got to do something with it.
you're 100% right. Finishing things, and that's when I talk to schools or or people at conventions and stuff. That's one of the things that I tell people is like, it may not be the best thing you do. The next thing you do will be better, but finish it. Like
Yeah.
you have to complete it. Um, because if you don't, like you're just gonna I've been guilty of this plenty of times, even currently. You start a project and you feel like you're spinning your tires and maybe it doesn't work and you just like you either finish it or you move on to the next thing that you can finish.
Mhm.
Like you can't just keep starting things over and over and over.
Well, yeah, they say was it Voltaire said the enemy of, or was it the perfect
The
is the enemy of the good?
yes,
Because like even just getting anything out is difficult. But like,
absolutely.
but I'm guilty of it too. You want to make the most perfect thing in the world, and you can work on it for like some people have the benefit of that. Like if you're like I don't
Right,
know, a Ridley Scott or something, you can spend like
right,
3 years making a movie. Or James Cameron, I guess, to spend 5 years making a movie or
right,
whatever, and
right,
to get every little detail. But like, there's lots of people's work you can go back and look at, artists or writers, and you can say like I can see a glimmer of the person they became.
yeah,
But right now, it's there. It's not, I wouldn't say it's perfect, but like at least
right,
they're getting there.
yeah.
Like just early Mark Bagley comics compared to what they look like now. Like I love he's one of my favorite comic artists. And to look at like I don't know, old Venom comics or something where he's probably on a
Sure.
crazy deadline and couldn't get everything done in time. You're like, this is a far cry from, his Ultimate Spider-Man work. But
Right.
there's all these different factors at play, but it's out there and you got it done.
If you like Mark's stuff, you should. So I had always been under the impression that Spider-Man was his first book he had ever done. Right.
Oh no, Strike Force Mortuary, was that it?
Right. Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say he did a
yeah,
lot of that new universe stuff that
yeah.
I had no clue about until I got the Marvel app and I'm going through and I'm like, oh my God, like this is Mark like 5 years before he
Yeah.
he gets to Spider-Man.
Was
Yeah.
he is the Strike Force Morituri stuff on the app?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, it is.
oh, cool. I thought there was some rights issue with that. I actually like when I first got eBay, like when eBay first became a thing, or I first got into it. I remember one of the
Yeah.
first things I went to find was the rest of that series because I'd read a few issues and I really loved it, and it was super cheap, and I got the whole thing, all the issues,
Right.
and I'm like, it was like 30 issues or something with the
Yeah.
bookend series. It was such a
Yeah.
good series. I really feel like it's one of the most underappreciated and not spoken about comics Marvel ever put out with a crazy
Ab-
cool idea.
Absolutely.
Like Peter
Yeah.
B. Gillis, I think, wrote it, and
I don't
I
remember.
think I think that was his name, Peter Gillis, I think.
Yeah.
And the idea, like for a TV show or a series, especially with the concept that the heroes constantly, if they don't get killed in battle, they just blow up eventually, and then
Right. Right.
you're just cycling in new people all the time, and it's a really cool idea.
Yeah. I'm
Uh,
kind of there probably are some sort of issues with that. I'm pretty sure they're all on the app. I know they were
oh, most likely, I don't think anything
a couple
really
years
falls
ago
off it.
when I
So
read them, but yeah, I am surprised that they have like they brought some of that new universe stuff back, like Starbrand
yeah.
has come back, but I'm surprised that they haven't brought that back yet.
I'm still waiting for Kickers Inc. to make its big comeback.
Right.
That's the series. I it, weird a number of copy issues of that series for some reason. Even though I was a kid that didn't care about football,
Right.
I think I was just happy about comics. But
Yeah.
just incredibly strange. Like they're like, let's just make a team of superheroes based around a football team,
Football team.
an
Yeah, why not?
intergender football team somehow.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
uh I love when it didn't need like I would love seeing those pitch meetings when they just were like, here's a football's big right now. Can we make a or like Super Pro, one of those that weird
Right.
old
Super
character that
Pro.
yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, it is weird. Like it does seem like almost anything went at that time. It was like early mid 80s. They're like, let's just throw something. And the crazy thing is like those books were selling like 100,000 copies, if
Yeah.
not more. Like, the audience for everything. I remember can't remember, a buddy of mine telling me that he had read an article about when they canceled Dark Hawk,
Mhm.
and they had canceled it because it was only selling like 111,000 copies or something like that.
Oh,
Which,
piddly sum.
oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
like in today's, numbers, like that would be the biggest hit. But yeah, back then, I guess, 100,000 copies, meh, nobody cares.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah, thinking back about those old like Dark Hawk rather was the like as a kid he was like the cool new superhero because like you didn't get new superheroes.
Right,
I remember I was really
right.
taken with him and with Slapstick. Now Slapstick didn't stick around very long, but
No,
Darkhawk did, and got retooled over the years. But it was
it
like
did.
I was big into Spider-Man, still am, and he was kind of like
Yeah,
a new Spider-Man, like a young kid that gets powers and all that sort of stuff.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Speedball was one of like all the New Warrior
Mhm. Oh,
characters.
I was
I
a
was
big fan of New Warriors.
Yeah,
Like the old like when Bagley was drawing it
yeah,
back
right.
when. Yeah, yeah.
Totally.
That was a great fun little book. It's fun going back to read some of it now and you're like, yeah,
Yeah, yes.
but but when you're
And
young, you're like, yeah.
right. And I am definitely doing that with all these books. I'm like, man, I remember that being really good, and yeah, it's not that great.
Yeah, you can't go home sometimes, right? They say.
Yeah, sometimes
Old
totally.
movies I find like that too. Like it's weird the things because I have another podcast to do with a friend where we watched the X-Men cartoon from the 90s.
Oh, nice.
And
Yeah.
we've already reached the end of that. We're waiting for the new series to start. But
Yeah.
in the meantime, we have guests on and we do other things. But we're doing the movies right now. So
Oh,
yeah, and many of them are terrible. But we did one
yeah.
and two, and I remember after watching one, and especially after watching two, I love two. But I'm like, I thought Cyclops was a way bigger part of these movies. And I'm watching, I'm like, he has like four lines. He barely does anything, And it's just like
Yeah.
all these things in your head that you remember being a certain way, and you go back and watch it, and you're like, wow, this is wildly different.
Absolutely.
Wildly. Well, cool. So, were your parents receptive of you saying I'm looking for a career in comic books?
Uh, I don't really know. I mean, they knew they always supported me, like, my when we didn't live near a comic store.
Hmm.
So, uh, being in Arkansas again, no comic stores for forever, right? I think there was one in Little Rock, which, like I said, was like an hour and a half away, and I would go to that like once a year, maybe, right?
Save
And
up your
then
pennies.
right, yeah, it's like, okay, I know I'm going in a month. I'm gonna save every dollar I can, and I bought every back issue of X-Men I could, just slowly go making my way back. Um, when we moved to Kentucky, we lived in Radcliffe, Kentucky, which is right next to Fort Knox.
Mhm.
And Fort Knox being a military town, there were three comic stores in town.
Oh, cool.
And so like I went from like only having 7-Elevens and little things like that to three comic shops. So riding my bike all over town, on Wednesdays or whatever, and going crazy because I would, I was by that time I was 15-ish,
Hmm.
and like I'm bugging the comic store owners at this point, and but then we moved away from there to another little tiny town, and we were about an hour away from a comic shop again, and my mom would take me like once a month because she knew how much I loved it.
Hmm.
And then moved to New Hampshire, and thankfully we had a couple comic shops up here, and then we had conventions up here, which that was a whole nother thing. But I mean, they knew I loved it. I don't know if they knew that I was like, I thought I was ready. I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, I told them like I had horrible grades in high school because all I wanted to do was comics. I was so focused. Like I failed art class. I was horrible
Did you
because
have
all
one
I
of
wanted.
those particular art
Yeah.
teachers that's like this is an art, And that
Uh,
sucks.
you know what? They weren't dismissive, but they're like, you also have to do your painting or your sculpture.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just do the comic thing. You have to do these other assignments that we're giving you. And I was just not interested at all.
Yeah, I get that. I was lucky. My art teacher was like, if you do anything, he was just happy. Anything art, he was
That's
just
pretty
happy.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
We
but
like they knew I was really into art, knew I was into comics. I was working at a comic shop at the time when they decided they were going to move, and I just convinced them. I said, "Look, I'm horrible at school. Like, if you're sending me to college, you're wasting your money. Like, let me take a year off." And I was doing sample pages at that point.
mhm.
And I said, "Let me take a year off. I'm gonna focus on sample pages. If I can't get a job in a year, then I'll go to college."
Mhm.
And they're like, "We're moving anyway, so do whatever you want."
Yeah.
No, they weren't moving at that time yet. But right after I graduated, I was working at the comic shop,
Mhm.
and a art director for Fruit of the Loom, their sports and licensing division, came in,
Mhm.
and he was looking at, everybody was just starting to do digital colors at that time. And so he was kind of looking for samples for digital colors and stuff, and he saw, I think I was probably sketching. I had a bunch of my art up on the wall. The guy let me sell art and stuff, not that anybody bought any, but um he saw it, and saw something there, and he goes, "Hey, I didn't know what he was doing." He's like, "Hey, I work for a t-shirt company. Do you want to come in for an interview?" And I'm like, "Okay, sure." Like, this place is the shop I was working at was going to close in a month, so I had to find another job anyway.
Mm.
Uh,
No,
I
that's
didn't know.
a sad day when the comic store closes.
Yeah, well, the guy he moved to Florida. He's like, I'm just shutting down here and I'm moving to Florida and gonna
Yeah.
reopen there. So I go. I think my mom drove me to the interview, and it's in this huge building. We come around and I'm like, "Oh my God, like, this is the address." And it says Fruit of the Loom. Like, he didn't tell me it was Fruit of the Loom.
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh my God." And then I look at, like, I'm wearing this basically,
Yeah.
shorts and a t-shirt, and
Yeah.
I go in with my little horrible portfolio, and somehow, I was 18, they gave me a job.
Wow.
And then I was in a studio with like 30 illustrators,
Wow.
and they were, I mean, every single one of them was amazing.
Yeah.
It was, illustrators and designers, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where I got my education. So I dropped, I was still doing sample stuff, but I'm like, I've got like a fantastic job now. You go from working at a comic store, like bringing home like $120 a week, to whatever I was making. It was a considerably larger amount than what I
Yeah.
had been making at the comic shop. I'm taking all my friends out to dinner every night, and like,
Big
we're all
wig.
going to Applebee's tonight. Come on,
Yeah.
man.
Applebee's on me, boys.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember after I got that job, I bought a car. I drove it off the parking the showroom floor lot. Like, I thought I was hot shit. And I mean, it was amazing. And then my parents moved away, and I had to be out on my own. And then I'm like, "Oh, this money doesn't go that far."
Yeah. No, not really.
Yeah.
Not when there's other bills on top of it. No.
No. And so, I was still getting comics, and I was sending out samples, and I was getting good feedback from editors.
Mhm.
And then one of my buddies who I had worked with at Salem Sportswear, the Fruit of the Loom place, he left for another company in Maryland, and he called me about 3 months after he left, and he said, "Hey, I've got nobody down here. I love working with you. You're a talented guy. Uh, I need somebody down here to be like my right hand man." He's like,
Wow.
"Are you interested?" And I was, at that time I was probably 20,
Mhm.
and I was getting kind of sick of the Fruit of the Loom thing. And
What were you often like? Is it just like advertising you're working on specifically, like for
no, so
magazines, online stuff?
it was all t-shirts.
Also, all
So
T-shirt designs. Okay.
yeah, so I worked on MLB, NHL, NFL, NBA,
Wow.
Looney Tunes. So I started off on doing all the sports stuff. So we did all their sports licensing
Yeah.
for Loom.
Wow.
So any of those the caricature
Yeah,
t-shirts
yeah,
that were big. I tried to do those. I was not good at those. There were
yeah.
people that were so much better there.
Yeah.
I ended
Character
up
work is tough.
It was really tough. I ended up doing, I was doing design stuff and I ended up doing a lot of production stuff. So one of the designers would make a Bulls t-shirt. And then I had to take that Bulls t-shirt and go, okay, here's every other NBA, team. And I would do the designs for those. And then I got into the Looney Tunes stuff and I was much better at that. Um, but when this guy called, like they were doing t-shirts for Far Side, and they had a bunch of original t-shirts they were doing, and I was like, oh, that's so much more appealing to me. Like I wasn't a sports guy, so
Yeah.
but I had learned a ton.
Hmm.
And so I went down to Maryland. I brought my fiance at the time with me, went to Maryland, and I ended up doing all the t-shirts for South Park for the
Nice.
first like 2 seasons. Um,
I'm sure I've seen your work
WCW.
out there.
Oh yeah, yeah. WCW wrestling.
Wow.
Dr. Seuss, Three Stooges. Like it was so good. Yeah, it was amazing.
That's really
Um,
cool.
but I got out of comics for like those years because I mean, we were working like 15-hour days every day and just ridiculous time. So I had no time for comics. I've got my fiance down there. We soon after got married and had a kid,
Hmm.
and like yeah, it was all like I got no time to focus on comics anymore.
Yeah,
So I kind of got
absolutely.
out of it for like 2 or 3 years.
What brought you back?
I we moved back to New Hampshire and I started going to a comic shop where I am now, in Somersworth, New Hampshire. And one of the guy who owns the comic shop is an amazing guy, Ralph DiBernardo. And he put on the very first convention that the Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird went to,
Oh, wow.
and put out the Turtles #1. He ran a shop in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and had a convention there. They gave him copies of Turtles 1. He cut them up.
Oh, no.
He pasted them all over the front window of his shop
Yeah.
because it's a shitty comic that
Yeah.
nobody gets, dumb turtles with ninja things, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, the benefit of hindsight.
oh yeah. He cut up millions of dollars worth of books.
Well, there's the sea of tears that is coming from old comic
Yes,
collectors whose parents are like threw out a box of old. They're
right,
like, I had Superman 1, and my parents
right,
threw them all out or donated them somewhere. You know,
totally.
like I remember as a
So
kid, I found, and it's you can't like the modern era doesn't have that anymore. It's only old
no,
stuff. Like
yeah,
even like Walking Dead comics aren't worth that much. Like I know the series
right,
became a big thing, but
right,
the idea, like I remember I found Spider-Man 300, I think the first Venom for
yeah,
like 10 cents in a bin when I was a kid. And I was like, this is like the greatest find of my life.
right,
You
totally,
know, and it's probably only
absolutely,
worth like 300 or 400 bucks now. But like
yeah,
at the time, it
yeah,
was like just to me to have it was well worth.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I uh I I started going to this comic shop and they had a newsletter that came out. I can't remember. It must have been once a month. And they had a local guy doing the art for the cover of the newsletter.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Like, and I was probably the entire time I was out of comics. I think I was still drawing my own stuff, just
Mhm.
very slowly, and wasn't engaged in a community or anything.
Well, it's tough when you're drawing all day for work to want to do it
Right.
for fun when you get home. I get it.
Absolutely.
I love drawing too. I do. I have a few little just independent things I put out, but many years ago. But it's like when I'm a graphic designer by day. So
Yeah.
sometimes when you get involved with all that, it's like, getting back to doing more art stuff on top of the art stuff you've been doing all day makes you kind of,
Yep.
less involved, less
Yeah.
enthusiastic.
That is absolutely it. And that's what brought me back to New Hampshire was I got into doing web design
Oh, nice.
and um So I dropped everything in t-shirts, went and learned how to do web design in 2000, and yeah, started going to that comic shop, and I meet this other guy, and he's got like pinups in Savage Dragon, which I loved Savage Dragon, and we like hit it off right away. We ended up like we felt like we shared the same brain, like the
Mhm.
way we thought about we love Silver Age comics and Savage Dragon and Kirby, and you know my son's middle name is Kirby. Like we hit it right off.
Awesome.
And we decided I was doing a comic called Johnny Raygun, and I was doing it online. And I was doing the writing, the lettering, the pencil, the coloring, everything, and it was not great. It wasn't good at all. And
Great title though.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was a fun title.
Yeah.
Matt Talbot, he was really good at lettering. He could write. And we saw that there was a Boston Comic Convention coming up, and we had like 3 or 4 friends that all drew comics here in New Hampshire, and we decided like all together, all 4 of us, we're going to put out a comic, and we're going to go to this Boston Comic Con, and we're going to get a table, and we're going to sell our books, and it's going to be a fun time. And it ended up Matt and I were the only 2 that did anything.
Hmm.
And we worked on a Johnny Raygun comic, and it was kind of like, this is the launch. We just said, okay, this is going to be Johnny Raygun #1. Did like a 8 to 10 page thing. We printed it ourselves. I think it cost like $3.50 to print each
Yeah.
copy. We were selling it for $3. Like we were losing money like right off the top.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And but we had a book in our hands, and this was the first time we'd ever like, oh my God, this is amazing. And we go to the show, and we almost sold out. What we didn't know was Ralph, the guy from the comic shop, was set up there. He was sending people over and giving them like $20. He's like,
Aw.
go buy some books from these idiots because they're not going to sell any of them.
That's
And
sweet.
yeah,
That's
it was
sweet.
really nice. And at the end of the show, we go over to Ralph, and we show him like our $200 or whatever we made. We're like, Ralph, we did great. We
Well, you
did
owe
awesome.
300 to the printers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, good job, guys. He's like, you know what? If you guys want to do this on a regular basis, I will publish it for you. We're like, oh my God, that's crazy. So we kind of got together and like, you think we can do this? And we're like, yeah, let's do it on a quarterly basis. Like we both again had day jobs. We're both designers, and we ended up doing Johnny Raygun quarterly. We put out 6 issues, and then we ended up Ralph was, God knows, tens of thousands of dollars in debt because it didn't sell great, and we ended up both kind of going, okay, we've had enough. We're both buying houses, so now like things are even more serious. Like I've got 2 kids and a house.
Mhm.
Like all my freelance time cannot be spent on doing comic books. I
Yeah.
need to actually make money.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So then you went to, was it like the making money, I assume, was the web design stuff?
Uh it was more, I mean, I got into more commissions and
Mhm.
and stuff like that, and I did web design for over 20 years, and I hated it pretty much every minute of it. Like
Oh, I
it
do
was
it now, and it's not my favorite part of the job. So
yeah, I mean, it was a great paycheck, right? I
yeah.
had health insurance, had a fantastic paycheck. Yeah, it was awesome. And I just got I got laid off 2022 at the end, right before Thanksgiving 2022, and
Mhm.
I've been doing freelance comics now ever since, and it's been amazing.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
is it mostly cover work? Is we're looking at some of the stuff that's come up
I
lately?
do a lot of cover work. I'm working on a pitch right now for Mad Cave. So hopefully something like that goes through. I've got a Kickstarter going on right now
Yeah, tell
for
me about that.
yeah. So for a little while I was publisher for Black Caravan, co-publisher with my partner Joe Schmalke. We were was a subsidiary of Scout Comics.
Mhm.
They kind of gave us the keys to the house and let us do whatever we wanted to. And Gods of Brutality is one of the books that I wrote, and my good buddy Mark Welzer illustrated. And it's about a rock star that dies, goes to hell. He prays to every god under he can think of to save him from hell. And Odin and Zeus send Thor and Hercules down into hell to save him. And so that's the basis of the book.
It sounds incredibly metal.
It's very metal. That's
Yeah.
Mark is a big metal fit. Mark and I had worked on a couple other series before that. We worked on this book called Global Eye that was just a weird, really, really weird story. It had like Twinkies and robot suits and cockroaches and stuff. And then that didn't work out. And we did another book called Thunder Girl on Dinosaur Island. That didn't work out. So
Great ideas. These ideas are lovely. Yeah.
They're all fun.
Yeah.
Mark is a big Savage Dragon fan. Actually, the next issue of Savage Dragon that comes out, Mark and I have a backup story in it that Eric let us do.
Oh, cool.
So that was a lot of fun. But Mark's a big Savage Dragon fan. I'm a big Savage Dragon fan, and so I kept pulling him back because he didn't do a lot of stuff on his own, and I kept going, man, this guy is so freaking talented. Like, I can't just let him waste over here.
Mhm.
Like, I don't have any money to pay him, but like if he's not making money and I'm not making money, like we might as well not make money together.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I kept roping him back into trying new things, and this time I'm like, hey man, I'm the publisher. Like anything we do, he gets the instant green light.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said, what do you want to draw? And he's like, I'm really into He-Man and I'm into metal and this and this and this. So I like pitched him like 3 or 4 different things, and he's like, oh, I like that one. And so we expanded on the Gods of Brutality thing, and
that's awesome.
Ended up doing 4 issues there. We shut down Black Caravan at the end of 2022 for reasons I can't go into.
That's fair. No worries.
But we never got to do a trade. So Mark and I now had the ability, like, okay, let's do a Kickstarter for this. And so we collected everything. We've got a nice sketchbook section and everything. So it's live on Kickstarter right now.
And it's a finished story, right? Like it's just a
yes,
complete one.
It's not. It is a complete story arc.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've got a lot more volumes planned. And we're working on kind of a sister book to it called The Bloody Ring of Dracula.
Great title.
Thank you. I mean, we do, if nothing else, we do comics that are fun, right?
Yeah, 100%. Well, this does look like a really fun book. I'm just looking at the Kickstarter now. Looks like you guys hit your pledge, but
yes, we hit our pledge. We're pretty excited.
That's fantastic. No, that's huge. It looks like a blast, actually. I'll have to check this out.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's one of my friends that I've known since high school. One of my best friends, Jay Isabel. He read it and he goes, Rich, I've been trying to figure out how to tell you this for the last couple months. I feel really bad. This is the worst piece of shit you've ever written. He's like, it's just all violence and like dumb jokes. Like it's just all action. And I'm like, exactly. That's what I was going for. Yeah. I'm not trying to write like the next Sandman here. Like I just wanted a book where it's just violent and these 2 guys, or 3 guys, they're kind of like brothers in hell, and they pick on each other constantly, and they're just trying to make their way out of hell, but it's not easy, and it's not a high concept.
Well, yeah. I mean, hey, it came from somewhere, right? So,
right, yeah.
That's cool. That's very cool. Well, how did like getting the cover work and stuff? How did that come along? Is it just submitting when they're like to the various channels to see you did Invincible and I wanted to ask you about in the Last Ronin stuff, and there's one particular one I wanted to ask you about because I didn't even know this was a comic book, but I'm excited to read it. But I'll get to that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So when Matt and I were doing Johnny Raygun, kind of in the middle of doing that, in between issues. We had done some work for Eric Larson for Savage Dragon, little pinups, and we did a backup story. We wrote the origin of Kill Cat,
How did you
which
get
was
to that part though? How did you get to work with Eric?
so. When I met Matt, he had a pinup in Savage Dragon,
Oh, okay.
and I was amazed. I'm like, oh my god, how did you do that? And he's like, I just emailed Eric. They're like, oh, it's that easy? Like you can just email these guys?
Yeah.
He's like, well, at least Eric, yeah. And we kind of took that what Matt had done and just emailed, this creator. And like I said, we had done a little bit more for Eric, and we're starting to go to conventions and meet other creators and stuff. And anytime a new image book would come out, we thought, you know what? Why don't we just email this guy and see if we can get a pinup in there? And like 90% of them said yes. They were all looking for content at that point. Everybody was doing pinups in the back of books at that point. So that's how the Invincible thing came along, and we ended up talking to Kirkman several times, and we did pinups for two other books that he had done a Savage Dragon God Wars book that we had done a pinup for, and then he had done a Super Patriot series that we had done a pinup for. And we had met Kirkman at like a show or two, and he was always very nice to us. And
He seems like a really pretty cool guy generally.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Invincible at that time was like, we're reading it, and we're like, this is the kind of book that we're doing with Johnny Raygun. Like it has very similar sensibilities to it.
Yep.
Ours is a little more Silver Age than what Invincible was, but it was kind of like taking those Silver Age sensibilities and modernizing them.
hmm
And we felt like that's kind of what Kirkman was doing, and we were really excited about that. But so we kind of got our foot in the door just by contacting all these creators and just saying, hey, we would love to we're not expecting money or anything. We just
hmm
love to get in a book. And that built and built and built. And then one day Ralph from the comic shop calls me. It was 8, 9 in the morning, and said, hey, I've got this Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cover that I'm doing with IDW. Do you have any interest in doing a cover for that? And I'm like, a cover? Like, I've never done a cover. I've done back covers, I've done pinups, I've done covers for my own book, but
hmm
I've never done a cover for anybody else. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Turtles, that's like a legendary thing. And so what I found out later was he had called like two or three other artists, and they were like, you need it today? Like, no way. I'm not like, I don't have time to drop everything I'm doing.
Well, you call
And
the right
me,
guy.
yeah, I'm like, I'm hungry. I'm calling work and telling them I'm sick, and I kicked out a cover in a day.
Nice.
So that's the shredder with the Casey Jones reflecting in his blades. That and then I ended up doing a Powerpuff Girls cover with him, and most of my cover work has been through comic shops needing like an exclusive cover for their thing. And
I had someone on the show a while ago that does similar stuff. Mike Ruth. He's a
yeah, oh
Canadian.
yeah, Mike's great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. He was on the show early on when I first started doing this podcast like 3 years ago. But
oh, he's
yeah,
amazing.
super. I met him at like Halifax has a big comic convention.
Yeah,
I've met him here several times. We usually hang out when he's around, and he's a super cool guy to hang out with. Yeah,
he's a really, really nice.
yeah,
I
he's a
just
blast.
met him in person for the first time a couple months ago, and he was
Yeah,
just a super, super nice guy. Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah, I figured you guys probably worked in the same circles since you're both doing
Yeah.
covers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you about the Creature from the Black Lagoon comic because I'm a massive fan of that movie, and
So that was just a print that I did.
oh, is
Although
it?
there is an Image comic coming out
That's
now.
what I heard about. So I thought maybe they're
Yeah.
connected. That print's
No, I
beautiful.
wish. I had done that as a commission for somebody, and
It's beautiful. I love it.
thank you. I plan on doing a series of those. Dracula is next on my list.
Nice.
But yeah, like that was I love the Universal. I don't know if you can see in the background. I've got a bunch of Universal Monster toys back
Oh
in
yeah,
the
I can see
corner
the
there.
creature there. Yeah, I got one in my
Yeah,
cabinet over here, and I have the poster on the wall over here too.
so much fun.
Yeah,
All those Universal guys are great.
well, that's a hoot. Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of that. Awesome. Well, very cool. So the I guess what's on the future besides the Kickstarter? Like what's next coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, I've always got like 100 things going on right now. Uh, After this Kickstarter and I get it delivered, I'm gonna do a Kickstarter. This is the 30th anniversary for Johnny Raygun.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna do a hardcover trade Kickstarter later in the year, but it had always been in black and white. And so I'm in the middle of coloring that. I've got a publisher for that. CEX is publishing that. They also
Sweet.
publish my buddy Joe Schmalke's comic 7 Years in Darkness, which if you haven't read that, it's awesome. Joe and I worked together on a book called Electric Black for several years, and we will probably be bringing that back at some point. It's a matter of hello, Kitty.
Yeah.
Um,
I got one that
it's
usually invades my calls too. He seems to be sleeping, I guess.
for him and I, it's a matter of like lining up,
Yeah.
times. He works on books, I work on books. Now that I'm doing freelance full time, I have to budget my time a lot more carefully.
Hmm.
So, like I said, I've got a book that we're gonna pitch to Mad Cave pretty soon. So hopefully, maybe by the end of the year that'll come out, or maybe early next year. Um, Trying to think. Bloody Ring of Dracula is going to be coming out probably later this year too. Yeah, so I do, I do a little bit of writing over here so I can I can pump out words a lot faster than I can draw. Um,
Yeah, it's
and then
usually the case.
I've got a new Turtles cover. Um, there is
Oh,
a Teenage
beautiful.
Mutant Ninja Turtles 40th anniversary convention in Portsmouth put on by Ralph DiBernardo.
Mhm.
That's coming up in April, and this is a cover for uh, one of their books.
Wow, that's
And,
gorgeous.
I just did a cover for Archie for their library of their cursed library,
Hmm.
and so that's going to be a cover for their free comic book day cursed library book.
Oh wow, sounds like you're being quite busy.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I always have, like I said, I've got my fingers in a couple different pies all over the place, but
Well, that's the
try
life
to
of the
keep busy.
freelancer.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Like a
Uh,
shark. If you stop swimming, you die.
it's funny. I use that allegory all the time because I mean I
Yeah.
work for myself doing freelance stuff, graphic design stuff. But I try to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get back into comics because it's been years and years since I've done anything. But you know what it's like when you're trying to. You got a life and responsibilities. But
Absolutely.
but I got a drawing tablet, and I've been having a lot of fun getting back into it. So it's just a
Oh,
matter of
very cool.
putting something together, I guess, that I can get
Yeah, I'm
out.
looking forward to seeing what you do.
Oh, thanks. I have some prints and stuff that I have online, but nothing that I sell at conventions. But I don't know,
Yeah,
like to do another narrative comic seems like something I really want to get into. So
that's
and
awesome. Yeah.
and yeah, I know what you mean. Like when you're talking earlier about like perfection, trying to get that perfect thing, and you
Yeah.
kick around so many ideas and you retool them, and then it's like in the end you just got to pick one and run with it. And that's
Yeah.
kind of at the state I'm at right now. So
Yeah. It is hard to do because I mean it ends up being like a mental block sometimes, right? Like, yeah, you want it to be as good. When we were doing Johnny Raygun, Matt and I, we were at that point on a deadline,
mm,
and it was after you work all day and you get home and you make dinner and you tuck in the kids, then you draw from 8 o'clock to midnight, whatever.
mhm.
And we would get to I would finish penciling a page and I would scan it and send it to Matt, and I would be like, Matt, this is horrible. Like, you're inking it. Can you touch that? Like, can you
Yeah.
clean this up or touch this up? And I would always like the next one's going to be better. And that ended up being my philosophy, and it's my philosophy now. Like, you learn from that bad page that you did.
Mm,
Sometimes it's time constraints. Sometimes it's just the constraints of your talent, right?
yeah.
It's what your ability allows you to do. And as long as you're learning from that, like, that's really the important part. And like, hopefully the next one's going to be better.
Absolutely. Absolutely cool. Well, it's been great chatting with you.
Yeah.
Rich, thanks.
Thank you again for taking the time to
Oh
talk.
God, anytime. And definitely like this will be out on Monday. So
Oh, awesome.
yeah,
Fantastic.
so that way you can be in time with your Kickstarter and hopefully those
Thank you. I
listening
appreciate that.
can get in there and grab it. It looks really cool. I know I'm gonna grab one.
Oh,
So
thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah, I like to try to support people on the show when I can, and this one looks right up my alley. I love these sort of
Oh,
fun.
awesome.
It reminds me a bit of just glancing at it. Is what was that comic? I haven't seen it in a while. Headlopper.
Oh,
Remember that?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
You
Like,
McLean. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if they continued on with that, or because I was getting it, and I don't know if it just it's ended or if he's coming back. Or
He's a New England guy, and it's weird because we kind of run in the same circles, but I've never met him. Like
hmm
he's even done signings at my local comic shop, and I just things don't match up, and I don't get to go see him. But I know he just put out a new comic. Can't remember. It's like a looks like a chibi Godzilla kind of thing that looks really cool.
no,
But yeah, yeah. I know he's got at least 3 or 4 volumes of Headlopper out though.
all right, yeah. No, I probably have all the single issues. I've read most of them.
Yeah.
But is there a dream project? I guess the final question that you haven't got a chance to work on that you'd love to or
Oh,
cover.
fantastic. The Fantastic Four.
Wow.
I mean, I'm such a Kirby fan. Like, yeah, that's my dream project is working on the Fantastic Four, or the New Gods. If I'm working for DC, it'll be New Gods. If it's Marvel, I'll take
I
Fantastic Four.
just finally read Tom King's Mr. Miracle series,
Yeah,
which is very interesting. It's probably one of the deepest New God stories I've ever read. And
it
like,
really is. Yeah,
I mean, like Morrison, like I'm a huge Morrison fan, so like his Final
yeah,
Crisis stuff kind of delved into it, but not in a way that like took it in some real life stuff. It just was fun, comic book stuff. But
right.
yeah, I was quite surprised how touching and deep that series was. I mean, King's a
It
great
really,
writer, but
yeah, he is. I think the Mr. Miracle thing is my favorite thing that he's written, and it's kind of like Invincible or what we were doing with Johnny Raygun. It takes all those classic ideas and it gives them a modern twist, and if like you said, it kind of focuses more on the family and how would running a family and everything work if you're also having to run a war on Apocalypse or whatever.
and the
And
idea of escaping, like
yeah,
I think he really leaned hard into this whole idea that like, that Mr. Miracle's mantra in that series is always I can escape if I want to. And
yeah,
it's and sometimes the things we need to escape aren't necessarily a prison or a box
right,
or chains. It's like just life, like just
right,
the responsibilities and sadness and whatever that comes with life. Like, and that's an
yeah,
interesting, like escaping death in a sense, but also escaping life. Like it's very cool. And he took it
yeah,
in such a weird meta, like I guess you're at a certain age where you revalue these sort of things and you think about them a lot more. And then when you read a comic that sort of speaks to you, you're like, yeah, this guy's on my
yeah. I
wavelength.
feel this. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Life is hard. Thank you, Tom King. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much, Rich. It's been a pleasure talking to
Yeah,
you.
thanks again. I appreciate it.
Oh, anytime at all. And maybe somewhere down the line we'll catch up again.
That would be awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, if you ever find yourself in Nova Scotia, drop me a line.
I will definitely do that.
All right. Talk to you soon.
See you later.
Bye bye. That was a great chat with Rich. I had a good conversation with him, good talk, and he's referencing, missing a date we had planned for talking, but it was because his wife's at the airport and it took longer than expected. No biggie, no problem at all. Always happy to coordinate with my guests to make sure that we get them on the show when they're not rushed and they're happy and comfortable. Always a pleasure to talk to those folks, and always happy to accommodate because it takes a lot. They take an hour out of their day to come do this, and maybe more sometimes. And I really appreciate it. And I think the listeners do as well, because these chats are fun and some great conversations we've had, and we'll continue to have. In fact, we have a new one starting next week with Paris Elaine, who is a comic artist for Marvel Comics and DC and various other properties. He's worked on Static Shock. Very cool guy and a great conversation. That one's coming up next. So if you want to tune into other great podcasts, be sure to check out the United Federation of Podcasts, which is the group we are a part of, very proudly so. And yeah, lots of great shows over there, including our sister podcast, X-Rated, the X-Men Anime Review Show, in which my producer for this show, Davin, and I discuss the X-Men cartoon from the 90s and various other connected things while we're waiting for the new season to start. So that's always a hoot. And if you're not sick of my voice yet, you can go tune into it more over there. Usually yelling at Davin about something X-Men related, or vice versa. So yeah, great talks over there, great conversations, and if you love that show as much as we did, might be the show for you. But be sure to tune in 1 week's time to this show for our next episode. So have fun, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time. The Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.